I'm truly honored to be walking with you on this journey of exploring the Buddha's teachings not as something distant or abstract, but as a real art of living, right here in the middle of everyday life. Today, I want to invite you into a story. It's not just theory, it might just shift the way you see those who have hurt you. Have you ever wondered, why do I keep attracting toxic people? Even when you've tried your best to stay calm, to be kind, to keep a healthy distance, they still show up, almost as if some invisible force keeps pulling them toward you. Is it just bad luck? Or is there something deeper happening beneath the surface of our words and actions? Now, what if I told you this? The way you breathe, the way you think, even the energy you radiate may unknowingly be sending out invitations to those very people. Sounds strange? But neuroscience and psychology both agree our internal state, from anxiety and insecurity to our reactive patterns, creates a kind of frequency, and the world either resonates with that or repels it. Toxic people don't need you to say a word. They can feel if your mind is quietly open to chaos or not. Here's the part that still amazes me to this day. You don't have to fight to get rid of toxic people. When you shift your inner energy, they often leave on their own. No need for dramatic breakups or loud boundaries. When you're calm, clear, and grounded in mindfulness, people who thrive on chaos start to feel out of place. Like waves crashing on a still lake, they have nowhere to land. So they slowly step back, not because you forced them to, but because you gave them no reaction to feed on. And so, let's walk together into the heart of today's topic. Why do we keep reliving painful relationships? And more importantly, how do we step out not with anger, but with quiet strength? Have you ever sat in a conversation where someone said something deeply hurtful, and you knew if you responded right then, it wouldn't end well? You'd lose your temper, say things you'd later regret. So you stayed silent. And later, you wondered, was that weakness? Am I just avoiding conflict? In today's noisy world, where everyone fights to be right or to have the last word, silence often gets mistaken for weakness or avoidance. But for those walking the path of awakening, silence is something else entirely. It's a sign of maturity, of mindful choice, and it's far from easy. The Buddha once said, "Among thousands of useless words, one word bringing peace is better." And also, one who knows when to remain silent is practicing right speech. Not everyone who stays silent is wise, but the wise often stay silent, especially when they see that words no longer heal, but could become weapons, cutting both ways. There's a beautiful story in the Anguttara Nikaya. One day, a man approached the Buddha and hurled insults at him, trying to provoke a reaction. But the Buddha remained calm, his face serene, his eyes gentle. After a while, confused by the lack of response, the man asked, "Aren't you offended by what I said?" The Buddha replied, "If someone offers a gift, but the other person does not accept it, to whom does the gift belong?" The man paused and understood. In Buddhism, silence is not cowardice. It's a sacred pause, a moment of deep awareness, a space where clarity returns. Because when we speak from a disturbed mind, our words are no longer tools of compassion or wisdom. They become echoes of pain. A person with inner strength doesn't need to prove anything. And someone who knows themselves doesn't need to explain just to be understood. When the mind is steady, we realize not every comment deserves a response. Not every emotion needs to be acted upon. And not everyone deserves a place in our inner peace. In moments of provocation, silence becomes a powerful precept because it doesn't just protect our peace, it prevents us from creating new karma. You don't need to speak to win. In Buddhism, winning over others fuels ego, but winning over yourself? That's liberation. Silence doesn't mean you feel nothing. It means you've learned to lay your feelings down before they take over your words. The more spiritually mature someone becomes, the slower they are to speak. Not out of fear, but out of care. Because some things, if left unsaid, dissolve on their own. But if spoken from anger, they become seeds of karma. And maybe the most profound thing about silence is this. When you're quiet, not only do others get to observe you, you get to observe yourself. You see, is your heart still wounded? Is your mind craving validation? Is your ego itching to retaliate? Silence helps us see all of that before it becomes action. To those walking the mindful path, silence is a sacred return. It's the breath that grounds, the pause that protects. When you no longer need to argue, when you don't need to speak just to be loved or understood, that's when you begin living from the inside out, not from the outside in. A well-tended silence doesn't just calm the heart, it disrupts the control toxic people have over you. Because toxic energy survives on reaction. It feeds on drama. It stirs the pot to keep you spinning. But when you stop spinning, when you stop opening the door, they run out of fuel. Like a small rock thrown into a vast ocean, the surface may ripple briefly, but peace returns. The heart of someone who practices deeply is just like that wide, steady, deep, not because they don't feel the pain, but because they no longer need to react in the old ways. Silence is choosing mindfulness over impulse. It's the practice of guarding your speech, something the Buddha emphasized over and over. Because when you guard your words, you protect your karma. And when you protect your inner stillness, you protect your blessings. And maybe, just maybe, one of the most beautiful signs of someone walking the path of awakening isn't in what they say, but in what they choose not to say. There are moments when someone spends the whole day being kind, gentle with their words, careful not to hurt anyone. And then, just one careless comment from someone, one action that comes at the wrong time, suddenly lights a fire inside. And in just one unguarded second, the words slip out, the hand slams the table, or the eyes turn sharp and cold, and everything kind you did earlier feels like it never happened. Does that mean you lack spiritual practice? Not necessarily. Does it mean you don't understand the Dharma? Maybe not. Sometimes what's missing is simply the ability to regulate the mind right in that moment of being tested. In Buddhism, we often hear about the precepts, don't kill, don't steal, don't lie. But there's another kind of silent precept. One no one sees, no one praises, but it determines the kind of karma you create every single day. It's the inner discipline. Keeping the precepts doesn't just mean not doing bad things. It means not letting your mind be hijacked by defilements. Because the real danger isn't that someone hurts you. It's that your own mind lets them control you without you even realizing it. Someone who knows how to hold their mind steady, who doesn't speak while angry, doesn't judge without understanding, doesn't react while their heart is still boiling. That person is keeping a powerful kind of precept with themselves. Someone once asked a Zen master, "How do I know if I'm walking the right path?" The master replied gently, "Watch how you react when you feel insulted. There's no clearer test than that." No one truly knows how deep your practice is until you're challenged. The truth is, toxic people aren't stronger than you. They're just really good at spotting the cracks in your self-control. They don't overpower you with force, they bait you with strategy. If your ego bruises easily, they'll poke your pride. If you're sensitive, they'll strike with coldness. If you crave validation, they'll withhold affection at the exact moment you need it most. So it's not just about avoiding toxic people. It's about asking, what inside me is still easily provoked by them? The Buddha once compared an untrained mind to a wild horse. It runs after whatever it sees, excited when happy, explosive when angry, panicked when afraid. But a practitioner learns to hold the reins, not to suppress or deny emotions, but to know when to pause, when to breathe, when not to respond. And here's the beautiful part. Once you start regulating your mind, those people lose their power. They may still speak, still try, still manipulate, but your heart has no more space for them to hook into. There's no opening for them to plant seeds of chaos. At that point, you no longer need to avoid toxic people because you're no longer someone they're drawn to. People with inner calm become boring to those who crave drama because you don't react. You don't get pulled in. You're no longer playing the same game. In the Satipatthana Sutta, the Buddha teaches about observing mind within mind, watching the very emotions and reactions as they arise, so you no longer get lost in them. Instead of letting emotion drive behavior, you pause and notice, this is anger, this is pain, this is insecurity showing up. Just seeing it, that alone is regulation. Because the moment you see an emotion, you're no longer trapped inside it. And if one day, in the middle of a difficult situation, you can stop yourself from speaking in rage, from acting out of pain, then you've kept a deeper precept than any formal vow. The vow to not harm yourself. No one will praise you for it. No one will even notice. But the universe will, and your karma will shift accordingly. Those who learn to regulate their mind don't just keep the peace on the outside. They preserve their blessings on the inside. The steadier your mind, the lighter your karma. The quieter your mind, the clearer your path. And in the end, you'll realize no one truly has the power to hurt you. If you've already learned how to protect yourself, with mindfulness and awareness. There's a truth that sinks in deeper the longer we live and the more we practice. Not everyone walks away because they changed. Sometimes, they leave because you're no longer the kind of person they can cling to. There are people who once showed up in your life like they were essential. At one point, you might have believed that the bond was destiny family, soul connection, unbreakable. But then something shifted. You started to feel more grounded inside. You stopped reacting the old way. You stopped fearing abandonment. You no longer bent over backwards trying to please. And slowly, they drifted away. No big argument. No dramatic goodbye. They just stopped showing up. And strangely, instead of feeling hurt, you realize that's actually a sign of spiritual growth. Because people who operate from chaotic, anxious energy, they need someone to react. They need someone who fears losing them. Someone to chase, to explain, to cling. But once your mind no longer craves approval, once you stop needing to prove your worth, the signal they used to hook into you disappears. The Buddha once said, "There is no path to peace. Peace is the path." And when you truly start walking that path, you naturally become less interesting to those who thrive on drama. Think of it like a radio. If they're broadcasting on a frequency of fear, control, and emotional games, but you've tuned in to a frequency of stillness, clarity, and self-trust, the signals just don't match anymore. They won't always understand it. They'll just feel that somehow they no longer have power over you. They can't control you the way they used to. And so, they go looking for a new station, someone more easily hurt, more reactive, someone who still needs them to feel important. But inner strength isn't about never suffering. It's about being able to stay steady in the midst of suffering. It's not that wounds don't exist. It's that they no longer drive your behavior. When you stop needing to argue who's right or wrong, when you stop needing external validation, when your worth no longer lives in someone else's eyes, freedom begins. And at that point, all the people who used to control your emotions with coldness, guilt, or criticism, their methods stop working. They're not necessarily bad people. They're just people who only know how to survive in unhealed relationships. The Buddha never taught us to fight evil. He taught us to become immune to it, not by pushing back with anger, but by standing firmly, silently, and clearly in ourselves. Not by cutting off with hatred, but by no longer being emotionally available to manipulation. Here's the strange part. When your inner world gets strong enough, you don't need to say goodbye. People who once thrived on your reactions will quietly fade out because you're no longer interesting to them. You're no longer predictable. You're no longer giving them the fuel they used to feed on. Just like fire can't burn without oxygen, an anxious, chaotic person can't survive long if you stop supplying them with emotional energy. In the Dhammapada, the Buddha gives a beautiful image. The mind, when still, is like a deep lake. Disturb it, and it turns murky. Leave it alone, and it becomes clear again. The same is true for us. When something triggers, you don't rush to react. Let the mind settle. Let the waters clear. And from that clarity, you'll know who to keep and who to release. But more importantly, you'll no longer be affected by who stays or who leaves, because your stability doesn't come from them anymore. It comes from within, from a place only you have access to. Once your inner world is truly grounded, people who carry chaos will find they have no ground to stand on. Not because you push them away, but because your new energy simply doesn't let them latch on. That's not arrogance. That's clarity. A kind of clarity that makes chaos dissolve on its own. And then you realize inner steadiness is your best protection. You don't need to shield yourself from every arrow shot at you. You just need to make sure there's no crack in your armor. Because if there's no opening inside, the arrow won't land. In a world where everyone's trying to have the last word, trying to sound smarter, tougher, or just not lose the argument, choosing peace can often be misunderstood as giving up. But for someone on a spiritual path, someone who's truly practicing mindfulness, peace isn't surrender. It's a silent, steady form of self-discipline kept not just in behavior, but in body, speech, and thought. One time, a young man asked an old monk, "Master, I keep losing arguments. I try to stay calm, but I always get dragged into anger. Where am I going wrong?" The monk smiled gently and said, "You went wrong the moment you thought you had to win." That answer felt like a fresh breeze for many, because it points back to something central in Buddhist practice. Being right isn't the same as being wise. Sometimes the more important question is, did I keep my peace of mind? And at times, not letting your heart get stirred up is the most profound kind of discipline. In Buddha's teachings, precepts aren't just about avoiding actions like killing, stealing, or lying. They're about committing to live with mindfulness in every thought, every word, every movement. Keeping the body, speech, and mind clean isn't about being perfect. It's about avoiding new karmic seeds, especially in moments when emotions are running high. When someone attacks, criticizes, or misunderstands us, the instinct is to fight back, to speak up, to prove a point, to demand fairness. But if that reaction is fueled by anger or pride, then it's just a polished version of retaliation. And the painful truth is, in the act of trying to win that justice back, we often lose our peace first. Peace, if we don't choose to protect it, slips away quickly, sometimes with just a single harsh word. And once peace is lost, new karma begins. Even if it's just through a glare, a tone, or a thought. The Buddha once taught, "The mind leads all things. It's the forerunner, the creator." If one acts or speaks with a polluted mind, suffering follows just as a cart follows the ox that pulls it. In other words, the moment we let anger spark, the second we think, "I'll show them I'm right," we've already planted a seed of unrest within ourselves. And from that point on, even the smartest words carry the subtle energy of harm. On the other hand, when we choose peace, when we choose silence, when we choose to pause, it's not because we're scared or weak. It's because we know what truly matters. A peaceful heart doesn't get shaken by arguments or insults. A quiet mind knows when to speak, when to stay silent, and when to gently walk away from conversations that no longer need to be won. Choosing peace is choosing to stay on the spiritual path, unbroken. It's keeping the fire of practice alive, even when the world around you tries to light another fire in your chest. There's an old story. A man once shouted insults at the Buddha, but the Buddha simply smiled, saying nothing. Frustrated, the man asked, "Aren't you going to respond?" The Buddha calmly replied, "If someone offers you a gift and you don't accept it, to whom does the gift belong?" The man said, "To the one who offered it." The Buddha nodded. "Just so. I don't accept your anger, so it still belongs to you. I don't carry it in my heart, so it cannot burn me." That's not passivity. That's the wisdom of inner discipline. It's the understanding that we don't have to carry everything people throw at us. And because of that, we don't keep feeding their hatred either. When you don't react, don't push, don't pull, anger has nowhere to live. It dissolves in the stillness, like smoke fading into empty space. In daily life, people often say, "I have to speak up to defend myself." But if the words are just the wounded ego reacting, then it's like picking up a knife and cutting yourself from the inside. Keeping peace doesn't mean doing nothing. It means acting from awareness, not from emotion. In Buddhism, peace isn't just a feeling. It's the fruit of a life rooted in discipline, knowing when to stop and when to let go. Some springs begin underground. No colors, no sounds, no promises. Just a quiet little sprout breaking through the soil, slowly, sending roots deep into the earth, searching for water, anchoring itself silently before it even thinks about reaching for the light. And that's exactly how inner transformation works. All the most meaningful changes in our lives, they don't start with fireworks. They begin in silence, in places no one can see. In those quiet seasons, when a person no longer feels the need to talk about their spiritual journey, no longer eager to announce their progress or share their breakthroughs, that might be the very moment when something deep and real is starting to shift inside. Just like a tree doesn't say, "Hey, look, I'm growing." It simply receives sunlight, water, air, and rests in stillness. In Buddhist teachings, there's a beautiful term called satipatthana, a foundation of mindfulness. It's where the mind returns and takes refuge. Whenever someone steps back from the noise of the world and quietly observes their sensations, their thoughts, their emotions rising and falling, The mind begins to root itself again in something steady. No applause is needed. No need to tell anyone, "Hey, I'm being mindful." No need to broadcast that you're observing silence, walking in meditation, or staying calm through storms. Just do it quietly, consistently, because the biggest growth on this path always needs the silence of stillness to mature. In one sutta, the Buddha told the monks, just like a deep well holds cool, clear water even when no one draws from it, a wise person who nourishes the mind in stillness will naturally give rise to wisdom, like water at the bottom of a well. That means you don't have to prove your awakening. Just take care of your inner world every day with mindfulness, with breath, with choosing not to react to every passing storm. Eventually, the light will begin to shine on its own. There's no need to bang the drums to announce, "I'm changing." Because true transformation doesn't need to be believed by anyone else. It only needs you to know. Today, I reacted less than yesterday. I breathed more deeply in a tense moment. I chose silence over proving I was right. I returned to myself the moment my mind began to scatter. And the miracle? When change starts within, the chaos outside begins to dissolve too quietly. You don't have to push people out of your life. When your energy no longer matches theirs, they simply fade away like smoke. It's like tuning a radio to a different frequency. The old noise just doesn't come through anymore. That's why, as a practitioner grows, they often speak less about themselves, less about their progress, less about proving where they are on the path. Not because they've stopped practicing, but because they no longer need others to know. Because that inner stillness has become so natural, it doesn't need to be declared. There's a famous Zen story. A student once asked his teacher, "Master, how will I know if I'm really on the right path?" The master pointed to his shadow on the wall and said, "When you stop chasing your shadow, that shadow is our image, the version of ourselves we want others to see." When a person no longer craves recognition for their growth, that's when they've truly begun to live that growth. True transformation is always silent, like roots growing deep in the soil. No one sees it. No one claps for it. No one takes pictures. But without those roots, the tree can never rise. And in the same way, if we don't spend time going inward to observe, to reflect, to quietly adjust ourselves day by day, then whatever shows on the outside is just a thin coat of paint. It might look good to others, but it won't last with time. Only those who dare to grow in silence can truly endure on this path of real transformation. That's why, in Buddhism, we honor something called retreat practice, not to escape the world, but to turn inward and quietly nourish concentration, wisdom, and compassion. And then, one day, when the time is right, they return, not needing to say much. Just their presence is enough to bring others peace. People can say a lot of beautiful things about ethics. They can recite hundreds of verses from sacred texts, explain all the principles of good and evil, of karma and cause and effect. But if their words don't match their actions, if their eyes and gestures speak something else, then even someone who's never studied Buddhism will sense that something's not quite real. Because deep down, every human being, regardless of education or background, has a strong intuition. We can feel when something doesn't line up. When someone says one thing but lives another, they may never admit it out loud, but they feel it. And that disconnect between what we say, what we think, and what we do, that's exactly what erodes our integrity without us even noticing. In Buddhism, this is called body, speech, and mind not in harmony. It's when your lips chant the sutras, but your heart is still full of calculations. When your hands do good deeds, but deep inside, you're hoping someone notices and praises you. When you speak kind words, but your eyes still carry resentment. And honestly, people don't need to know the Dharma to feel this. They don't need to analyze it. They just sense it. A person with real virtue doesn't have to preach. Their calm presence, their gentle gaze, the way they listen, the way they know when to stay silent, that alone is enough to bring peace to those around them. Not because they're trying to please people, but because their body, mind, and actions are aligned. There's an old Zen story about a monk who lived high in the mountains. He didn't teach. He didn't write books. He didn't gather students. Every day, he just did the same things: carry water, sweep the yard, eat his meals, and sit in meditation. Yet people came from far and wide, just to sit near him in silence. They said, "Just being near him makes my heart settle." When asked about his teaching methods, the old monk simply smiled and said, "I don't have anything to teach. I just live what I believe." That right there is a powerful teaching for anyone walking a spiritual path. Ethics isn't about saying the right things. It's about living rightly, especially when no one's watching. And that right living doesn't come from books. It shows in how you respond when you're misunderstood, how you behave when no one praises you, how you stay calm when you're criticized, and how you quietly work on yourself without needing to explain. When a person thinks good thoughts, speaks kind words, and does good deeds, that alignment is virtue. It doesn't need to be forced. It doesn't need to be put on display. Because what's true doesn't need decoration. In the Anguttara Nikaya, the Buddha once said, "Just like agar wood fragrant even before it's burned, a sincere practitioner brings goodness simply by their presence, even before speaking a word." That doesn't mean spiritual people never make mistakes, but it means when they do, they know how to correct. They admit when they're wrong. They find their way back when they've strayed. And most importantly, they don't cover it up. They don't polish their image with clever words. Someone once asked, "How do you know if a person is truly trustworthy?" The simplest answer is, watch how they live. Not just on good days, but when they're tired, discouraged, tested, or things don't go their way. Because real integrity doesn't show up in comfort. It reveals itself in difficulty. When body, speech, and mind are in harmony, there's no need to convince anyone. The energy of that virtue will naturally radiate like the scent of a flower on the breeze. And the truth is, people can argue with ideas, but they can't argue with presence. A presence built through quiet years of self-reflection, through moments of stepping back when they were wrong, through long pauses before speaking just to be sure the words are kind. Such a person, even without saying a single teaching, makes others want to become better. There are moments in life when we feel like we're surrounded by toxic people. We think we're unlucky, that maybe we've been cursed or someone is out to get us. But if we pause long enough to look a little deeper, we'll often find something quiet but incredibly real. The outside world is simply reflecting what's happening inside. A person who's often anxious, sensitive, torn between wanting to be loved and fearing abandonment will naturally attract others who poke at those exact wounds. Not because people are cruel, but because their energy happens to match the parts of us that are still unhealed. Like two radios tuned to the same frequency, human beings tune in to one another energetically. You don't need long conversations. Sometimes just a glance, a vibe, a passing feeling, and you already know if there's resonance or not. That's why, instead of blaming those who hurt us, instead of trying to change them, make them kinder, make them love us better, what if we asked a different question? What if the shift needs to happen not in them, but in the energy we are putting out? The Buddha once said, "Mind is the forerunner of all things. It leads, it creates, it shapes reality." In other words, everything we see, hear, feel, it all begins in the mind. When the mind is transformed, even the world around us starts to look different. It's not that the world has changed. It's that we're no longer broadcasting the same old frequency. So the things and people that once matched that energy, they simply fall away. There's a Zen story that goes like this. One day, a man came to a monk and complained, "Master, why is it that I always meet bad people? Everyone uses me, betrays me. No one's real." The monk handed him a small bell and said, "Walk through the village. Ring this bell only when you meet someone whose heart feels truly at peace." The man walked for days, weeks, months. He never rang the bell. Finally, he returned, disappointed. "You were right, master. I didn't find a single peaceful person." The monk smiled gently and asked, "And what about you? Was your heart peaceful while you were searching?" And in that moment, the man understood. He had never carried peace within himself, so how could he recognize it in others? Energy isn't some vague woo-woo concept. It shows up in how we walk, how we breathe, how we answer the phone, how we handle rejection. If we're still chaotic inside, it doesn't matter how much we rearrange the outside, real peace will always feel out of reach. But when our inner world becomes calm, clear, grounded, even people who used to snap at us might soften. Or they might just quietly disappear. Not because we push them away, but because there's nothing left for them to cling to. That old dynamic doesn't find a match anymore. Old energy needs the old version of you to survive. Once you shift your frequency, those who aren't ready to change will simply feel out of place. And that's okay. They're leaving. Make space for something better to enter. Imagine you are a room. If the room is cluttered, dark, musty, no matter how many flowers you bring in, nothing will bloom. But if you clean the space, open the windows, light a bit of incense, you won't need to invite flowers. They'll blossom on their own. That's how energy works. You don't have to force anyone to change. You just shift yourself, and the rest realigns naturally. The Buddha never taught us to change others. He taught us to return inward, to tend the garden of the mind, to make our own heart a peaceful ground. And once that heart becomes steady and bright, you stop seeing negativity, not because it doesn't exist, but because it no longer has anything to hook into. Like someone who once craved drama, once they heal, chaos no longer excites them. Someone who once needed to be right all the time, as they mature, they begin to see that silence at the right moment is wisdom. And someone who once chased love to feel worthy, once they realize their worth was always within, they no longer run after validation. That's when you know your energy has shifted. And from that point on, your whole life begins to shift too. These days, peace feels like something both precious and fragile. In a world that's constantly moving, people rushing past, voices cutting in, social media flooding us with arguments, comparisons, and noise, just being able to sit with a quiet mind for one morning already feels like a spiritual achievement. But there's something even deeper we need to understand. Peace is not just a pleasant feeling or a relaxed state. In Buddhism, peace is a kind of spiritual power. It's an inner strength that allows us to walk through chaos without being swept away. It's the energy that helps us move through life without letting life move too deeply into us. The Buddha once compared the mind of a practitioner to a still lake with no wind. It's not that the world has no waves. It's that we no longer cling to those waves inside. So holding on to inner peace isn't about being selfish or escaping the world. It's the wisdom of knowing that without inner stillness, everything we've built through practice and discipline can collapse in just one moment of provocation. There's an old Zen story that goes like this. A young disciple came to his master and said, "Master, I'm trying to protect my peace, but people keep provoking me, keep trying to make me angry. What should I do?" The master pointed to the kitchen, where a pot of water was boiling. "When the water is boiling, can you see your reflection?" The student shook his head. "And what about when the water is still?" "Yes," the student said. "When it's still, I can see myself clearly." The master smiled. "Your mind is the same. If you let other people's words and actions stir you up, you won't be able to see yourself. And you won't be able to see others clearly either. So keeping your mind still is so you can see, and seeing clearly keeps you from going wrong." That story teaches us something profound. We don't protect our peace just to avoid stress. We protect it so we don't fall into ignorance. Because when the mind is agitated, wisdom fades. And when wisdom fades, we create karma even when we think our intentions are right. Some people react harshly not because they're evil, but because they haven't developed enough inner strength to pause. They don't yet have the calm to breathe through an insult. They don't yet have the resilience to sit in silence when disrespected. So they lash out, say or do something they'll regret for years. But those with spiritual strength, whether monastic or lay people, learn to put their peace first. They know that a peaceful mind is like invisible armor. It protects them from all kinds of invisible dangers. A sharp look might not break a relationship, but it can create emotional distance. A careless word may not create heavy karma, but it can erode respect and trust. And sometimes, just one moment of losing yourself can undo years of inner work. So peace isn't something you get just because you want it. It's the fruit of quiet, daily discipline. It's in the way you breathe, the way you see, the way you pause, and the way you choose not to react. And because it's that precious, the wise don't use their peace to bargain. They don't trade it away to be loved, to be understood, or to win an argument. Eventually, after years of chasing what we think we need, we all come to the same realization. Most of what once felt urgent doesn't really matter anymore. But inner peace, that only grows more valuable the longer we live. When someone is truly at peace, their words feel softer, their eyes feel calmer, their steps feel steadier. And just being in their presence without them saying a word can make us breathe easier. In the Dhammapada, the Buddha taught, "One who dwells in stillness, unshaken by praise or blame, gain or loss, fame or disgrace, that person possesses great strength." This kind of strength isn't loud. It doesn't come with titles or applause. It only shows itself in those moments when life tests us, and we still manage to smile with quiet grace. Not every goodbye needs a farewell, and not everyone who leaves your life needs to be pushed out. Some relationships don't require a dramatic ending. They simply fade away like a leaf falling from a tree when there's nothing left to hold it in place. The moment you stop reacting, here's something that many people misunderstand. They think that in order to find peace, they have to cut off every negative person, eliminate all toxic relationships, draw firm boundaries, and never look back. But for someone walking the spiritual path, the real work doesn't lie in outer actions. It lies in inner letting go. Because as long as the mind is still attached, you can block their number, unfollow their page, move across the country, and they'll still live in your head. In every flash of memory, in every quiet reaction, in every story you replay at night. Real transformation doesn't come from cutting someone out of your life. It comes from no longer letting them live inside your mind, not staying tied to them through pain, hope, expectation, or anger. The Buddha once said, "No one binds you except your own mind clinging to conditions." That's why the real work is not about confronting or avoiding people. It's about stopping the fuel that keeps the emotional cycle going. No more reacting. No more explaining. No more retelling the same story. No more sending energy in any form, not love, not hate, not sadness. And just like that, the karmic thread begins to dissolve. There's a beautiful image from Zen. They say messy relationships are like a tightly knotted rope. The more you yank at both ends trying to untie it, the tighter the knot becomes. But if you soften, loosen, breathe, observe, the knot relaxes on its own and eventually falls apart. The person who hurt you isn't the problem. The problem is that you may still want them to respond. You may still hope they'll change, say sorry, or give what they never could. Each time you wish for an apology, you're keeping the connection alive. Each time you retell the pain with bitterness, you're still feeding it. Each reaction recreates the bond. But the moment you stop, the energy loses grip, not because you hate them, but because you no longer need them to understand you, fix things, or make it right. A mindful person doesn't need to cut people off. They simply return to watching their own mind. And when they stop dancing in the drama, those who thrive on drama lose interest. Just like fire, it can't burn without fuel. Someone can't stir you if you don't respond, don't retaliate, don't give attention. And that silent walking away, that's what truly wakes the other person up. Because they realize they no longer have the power to pull a reaction from you. There's a Zen story where a student asked his teacher, "Master, should I end this toxic relationship?" The teacher calmly replied, "There's no need to cut, just stop clinging." And that's the truth. Cutting is an action. Letting go is a state. You can cut and still be tied. But once you've let go, nothing can hold you anymore. In the middle-length discourses, the Buddha taught, "The one who no longer reacts is the one who is free." Not reacting isn't weakness. It means your mind is no longer being controlled from the outside. That mind is free. That mind is liberated. And from that freedom, you no longer resent the past. You no longer need to win, and you no longer seek to be understood. Because in the end, what truly matters is not what they understand about you, but whether you are still bound by them or not. There are days when it feels like your heart is just a thin leaf, drifting in the wind of life. Someone says something careless, and suddenly, your mood drops. Someone pulls away, and your mind starts spinning, analyzing every detail. A message left on read, a vague look, a sentence left hanging. And just like that, you're thrown off balance, sad, frustrated, lost in your own thoughts. What's heartbreaking is this. Every time we get pulled into someone else's emotions, we drift a little further away from our own practice. We stop watching the mind. We forget the breath. We no longer remember that our inner life needs care, just like a garden needs daily watering. The Buddha once taught, "By oneself is wrong done. By oneself is one purified." Purity and impurity depend on oneself. No one can purify another. At first glance, it seems simple. But for those who truly walk this path, it's everything. Some people spend their whole life trying to please others. Some spend their youth trying to fix others, to prove their point, to show their kind, to be understood. But in the end, they're just exhausted and empty. Why? Because the effort was pointed in the wrong direction. The truth is, we can't control how others feel or how they act, but we can choose how we respond. We can choose where to place our attention. We can choose what to nourish in each moment. A true practitioner doesn't have time for drama. They're too busy cultivating awareness in every step, too busy noticing the mind's wanderings, too busy learning to speak with kindness, especially when the heart is aching. They don't chase right or wrong. They just quietly ask themselves, in this moment, am I living in alignment with the path I've chosen? And if the answer is yes, then it doesn't matter if others walk away, misunderstand, or go silent. The heart stays still. The water stays clear. People often think that those who don't react are cold or passive. But in spiritual practice, not reacting doesn't mean not feeling. It means feeling deeply, but keeping the heart still, like a calm lake, so we don't create more karma. Like a mountain, unmoved by the wind. Not because it doesn't feel the wind, but because it's anchored deep into the earth. The same goes for the practitioner's mind. If we don't want to be swept away by the winds of life, we must return to the roots every day. And those roots are the breath, mindfulness, the small, quiet actions, washing dishes with awareness, speaking gently when tired, walking with the knowledge that we're walking. When we turn inward to tend to ourselves, we lose interest in chasing others' stories. We stop trying to win arguments. We no longer need someone else to validate our direction. Because the heart has begun to find peace, not from the outside in, but from the inside out. One day, during a Dharma talk, someone asked the Buddha, "Master, how can I stop suffering because of other people?" And the Buddha replied, "Be like a gardener tending your own garden. Don't chase the wind. Water the roots." That teaching still holds true today. Instead of chasing others' emotions, take care of your own. Instead of reacting to every wave, pause, breathe, and respond from stillness. Because only from that place can virtue truly blossom. A practitioner doesn't look for peace in the world. A practitioner creates peace by being grounded within. Every day you return to yourself. You dodge 100 seeds of unwholesome karma. Every mindful breath is one more step firmly placed on the long path. And little by little, moment by moment, freedom stops being a distant idea. It's right here. It lives in every choice to anchor your mind instead of letting it drift away. Have you ever wondered why certain types of people keep showing up in your life again and again? It's not that they look the same or have the same name, but they seem to hurt you in the exact same way. One person leaves, another one comes in, but the script feels so familiar. Expectations, disappointment, love, and letting go, trust, and betrayal. And at some point, when you're tired and worn out, you ask yourself, why do I keep ending up with people like this? In Buddhism, this isn't random. It's karma, but karma that hasn't been seen clearly through the light of mindfulness. Old karma isn't a punishment. It's unfinished energy, a debt unpaid, a wound left unhealed. And because it hasn't been truly seen or understood at the root, it keeps circling back in different forms, with different faces, but the same patterns. It's like an undertow beneath the surface of the sea. The water above looks calm, but if you're not steady, if you're not awake, one moment of carelessness pulls you back into old waters. There's a line in the Samyutta Nikaya When the light of wisdom shines, the darkness of ignorance retreats. And mindfulness is that light. When your mind is fully present, not stuck in the past, not lost in imagination, then your old karma doesn't have the same grip on you. Because karma only controls us when we live on autopilot. When we react from old habits, we repeat old pain. When we seek love in the same ways, we choose the same wrong people. But with mindfulness, everything shifts. You no longer rush to say, "I love you," just because you're lonely. You don't try to save someone just to feel worthy. You stop proving yourself in relationships that were never right to begin with. And more importantly, you start recognizing the signs of karma the moment they arise. A glance that makes you anxious. A word that brings back old pain. A craving to be seen, to be understood, that feels way too familiar. In the past, you jump right in, no hesitation. But now, with mindfulness, you pause. You observe. You don't rush. Because you know, if you walk in without clarity, it's not love, it's karma in disguise. A student once asked a Zen teacher, "Master, how do I know if this connection is love or karma?" The master gently replied, "If the deeper you go, the more peace you feel it's love. If the deeper you go, the more chaos you feel it's karma." That answer wakes people up, because how many times have we said, "This time, it feels right," only to find ourselves exhausted all over again? Not because the other person is cruel, but because old karma is still running the show unseen. Without mindfulness, we blame others. We blame life. We blame fate. But those who are mindful, they don't blame. They simply turn inward, observe, heal, because they know when the mind shifts, the world shifts. When your frequency changes, karma can no longer tune into you. A heart that used to be soft and easily broken now takes a breath before reacting. Someone who used to rush into relationships now stops, listens, feels their inner knowing. Someone who once sought healing from others now knows true healing only comes from awareness within. When mindfulness is present, old karma can't pull you in anymore. Not because you're fighting it, but because there's no ignorance left to hook onto, no reactivity to feed it, no fear to run from it, no expectations to be disappointed. And in that space, the people who once hurt you, the cycles that once drained you, they quietly fall away. No need to cut them off. No need to push them out. They simply stop resonating. That's true freedom. Not escaping others, but escaping the unconscious version of yourself. And then, life begins to blossom. Not because the waves are gone, but because you have learned how to steer the boat. Thank you for staying with me through this entire reflection. We've walked together through layers of inner transformation, from cultivating silence, managing energy, and nurturing virtue, to releasing the hidden ties of karma. All of it comes back to one thing: taking care of your own heart through mindfulness. You don't need to fight. You don't need to fix anyone. Just come back to the breath. Protect your inner peace. And what no longer serves you will dissolve on its own, like morning mist in the sun. Some teachings don't need long explanations. When you live them fully, your energy is the teaching. And just like that, the spiritual path doesn't need grand leaps, only steady, consistent steps, like a mountain standing still, even in the strongest winds. So if you're in a time of uncertainty, with tangled relationships, messy emotions, don't rush to change the world. Come back to yourself. As the Buddha said, conquering yourself is greater than conquering 1,000 enemies. When you're steady and awake, old karma has no way back in. If today's reflection touched something in your heart, Please subscribe to Buddhism Seeds to keep walking this journey of awakening and healing together. And don't forget to like, share, and leave your thoughts in the comments below. Every sincere reflection you share is a beautiful seed of wisdom planted in this world. See you in the next video, where we'll keep listening to the Buddha's timeless teachings and keep slowing down to finally see ourselves clearly.